Warning: the following video contains explicit language, which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Are you ready? Hey everybody, it's Jeff. Well, I had to take my my phone, the one I'm using right now to record here. I had to take my phone down to this little shop there in town to have it repaired because, you know, the part at the bottom of your phone that plugs into, you know, to recharge your phone. For some of you just lay it on this pad thing there that charges it for you, but you know what I'm talking about, that little port at the bottom of your phone. Well, mine stopped picking up anything that, you know, I was plugging into it, so I brought it down there, and in, I don't know, 2.5 hours they had it fixed, and this was the part that they took out of it. You know, the port's right here in the bottom, see, and they had to replace it with a new one of these, I guess. And boy, it's tiny. I mean, just little tiny mechanism that's in the phone makes you, you know, think twice about ever dropping your phone. You know, and these two, well, I don't know if you can see that. Let me see, where's the camera here? You see them little, like a black square on both sides? Those are speakers, you know, and microphone that picks up, you know, your voice. Can you believe how small? You know, I don't know. I found it fascinating. You see, my father, he used to pick up. Oh yeah, this part here that goes up. That's a plug to the motherboard. You just press that into the thing. That's a plug. You know, my dad, he used to fix electronics. You know, like from the 80s, stuff from the 80s. Okay. And so, you know, this, I think he'd probably find this kind of fascinating if he was still alive, you know, to see this, because he's never fixed anything that was like, you know, cell phones or Blu-ray players and shit, or even some like the modern TVs we got, you know, like flats. Would never touch that, because it's just, he says it would cost as much to fix it as it would to buy a new one. So it kind of put people like him out of business. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of interesting to see how small things are. Will you decide where you're going to sit? Jesus, mother. Yeah, you just don't know. I mean, how small these things are until they take it apart. I never saw the inside of the phone, but he just gave me this piece. I don't know why, but he just said, here, take it. So I did. But I found that fascinating anyway. So there's a couple of videos that I have to play this, and the thing is both of these videos pertain to essentially the same subject. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to play the first video, then go to a commercial break, and then come back and do the second video, and then after that I'll save my piece or whatever at the end. No point in just commenting on the same, you know, at the end of each one and saying essentially the same thing. So I'll just play it that way. So this first one is from the Humanist Report, and it's about Trump defying federal judge restraining order on, you remember how he sent all those people in an airplane to El Salvador? Well, the judge had issued a stay on that to say, no, do not send them out there, but he already did anyway. So anyway, they're going to he's going to talk about that in this here, and we'll go to that and go to the commercial break after.
District court judges do not have the authority as a general matter, to enjoin the functioning of the executive branch.
I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
Well, we have officially reached the point where the Trump administration is now openly defying court orders. Now, up until this point, they've tried to at least provide some legal rationale for their non-compliance, even if it was flimsy. And though some Trump administration officials are still trying to uphold that facade because that's beneficial to them, others, including the vice president, are just now admitting they're going to do what they want, and there's nothing that the courts can do to stop them. And unfortunately, they're right. The courts don't have a military or a way to enforce the rulings that they put out. So if the administration says, we're not going to listen, there's nothing that can be done. And this is one of many lines that the Trump administration has recently crossed. In addition to this, Trump wrote on Truth Social that the preemptive pardons Biden gave to members of the House Select Committee on January 6th were now null and void because of this tweet that he made on Truth Social, and he announced his plans to investigate them. And by the way, he has no authority whatsoever to do this, but nonetheless, he's certainly going to try. He also asserted a new broad presidential power, arguing that he can actually circumvent Congress and unilaterally make political appointments without their approval. On top of that, his FBI is now looking to criminally charge environmental groups like Habitat for Humanity because they received grants from the EPA, which they claim are fraudulent. Also, another green card holder was detained by ICE and violently interrogated, stripped naked, and put in a cold shower after being detained at Boston Logan International Airport, despite no evidence that he committed a crime. And when it comes to immigration, the crackdown continues, and the Trump administration is creating a registry for undocumented immigrants and is claiming that if they fail to register, that's tantamount to them committing a crime, so they're presumably using this Hitlerian registry as a justification to expel all undocumented immigrants or detain them indefinitely as an alternative. And on that note, mercenary groups aligned with Republicans like Blackwater, whose war criminals were actually pardoned by Donald Trump in 2020 after they were convicted of committing a massacre, have proposed privatized concentration camps, which would presumably house undocumented immigrants indefinitely. They're also calling for a Gestapo run by citizens who would be able to arrest migrants themselves. And as draconian as that sounds, it's actually preferable, I guess, to this solution proposed by Republican congressional candidate Valentina Gomez, who says we should just execute undocumented immigrants. Yeah, and that right there is part of the reason why I refer to MAGA as a modern-day Nazi movement, because for all intents and purposes, this is a modern-day Nazi movement, and we need to stop pretending like that's not the case. We need to stop burying our heads in the sand and pretending that it's not exactly what it looks like. Now, while we're on the subject of immigration, Trump's DOJ is arguing that the president can unilaterally deport anyone he wants without any statutory authority, just on his inherent authority as president over national security, which isn't just an unprecedented argument as this tweet lays out, but it paves the way for the due process rights of all immigrants to be grossly violated, which isn't surprising because that's what they're already doing, but we'll come back to this later. It's just a lot for him to say that he can choose to deport anyone and the courts have no say. That is an amazing argument that a president is actually fucking making. Now, when it comes to free speech, I want to talk about that as well, because Trump seems hell-bent on destroying the First Amendment, and I know that every single partisan actor is going to accuse every president that they don't like of trying to destroy the First Amendment, but when I say Trump is trying to destroy the First Amendment, I mean he literally does not think people should have free speech. So he's sued media companies for criticizing him, and he's claimed that the Tesla boycott was illegal. And on top of that, he recently said that CNN and MSNBC's negative coverage of him is also illegal.
And I believe that CNN and MSDNC, who literally write 97.6% bad about me, are political arms of the Democrat Party. And in my opinion, they're really corrupt and they're illegal. What they do is illegal.
Now, incorrectly saying something is illegal when it isn't is very different than actually making it illegal. But to be clear, he doesn't have to literally outlaw criticism of him to make this a reality. He can make it de facto illegal to criticize him if there's this chilling effect on free speech and people are afraid to speak out against him. If his DOJ, FBI, and FCC go after people in media who criticize him, it doesn't matter that Fox News shits on Democrats and Biden all the time. But when it comes to him, he's special, and he doesn't think that it should be legal to criticize him. That's where we're at. So if you were wondering whether or not Trump has dictatorial ambitions, here's your evidence for the two of you who are still on the fence about that, or for the rest of you who are in denial. Now, he also thinks that it should be illegal to criticize judges that he has in his back pocket, like Eileen Cannon. And he said criticism of her also is illegal at the same event.
Her name is Eileen Cannon. I did appoint her, federal judge. And these fake lawyers, these horrible human beings, were hitting her so hard, public relations-wise. They were playing the ref. I don't think it's legal. I don't think it's legal.
So he doesn't think it's legal to criticize Eileen Cannon. The question is, does he think it should be illegal to criticize any judge or just the ones that he likes? And it seems like he just doesn't think the ones that he likes should be criticized. And I say that because Republicans like Senator Mike Lee is one of many Republicans who attacked a judge who temporarily blocked Trump's deportation of Venezuelan immigrants. In fact, he called for his impeachment because this judge issued this decision that he disagrees with. But that's seemingly not illegal in Trump's opinion because he agrees with Mike Lee's criticism. And also, according to him, the law is what he says it is based on another executive order that he signed a couple of weeks ago. So I'll just say what we're all thinking. Yes, this is dictatorship. And I think that we've reached a point where we are now in a liberal regime that's moving further along the spectrum towards authoritarianism. Trump has officially begun to target his political opponents, and he's also targeting the First Amendment and trying to make it so that way you can't criticize him, and he's discouraging media outlets from criticizing him by saying it's illegal to do that. On top of that, this administration just has not been complying with court orders, which is alarming since courts are the only remaining check on his power since Congress gave up even the pretense that they care about his various abuses of power. Now, as I said earlier, the Trump administration has always provided some flimsy justification for their non-compliance with court orders, which is why legal experts weren't ready to declare just yet that we were embroiled in a full-blown constitutional crisis. But that changed as of this week, and they're now just explicitly saying they're not going to listen to courts. As attorney Mark Zed put it, Trump's defiance of a judge's order to halt deportations of Venezuelans marks the beginning of what he's calling a true constitutional crisis. And before you accuse him of being hyperbolic, some Trump officials are just admitting it, like J.D. Vance, who responded to an Axios article about how the White House says it ignored a court order by saying there were violent criminals and rapists in our country. Democrats fought to keep them here. President Trump deported them. In other words, yeah, we ignored a court order. What are you going to do? Now, even though J.D. Vance is admitting this, there are still members of the administration, as I alluded to earlier, who are trying to uphold this facade that they're not just defying courts because they don't want there to be concerns about a constitutional crisis, even though we have indeed entered that territory. But Axios reports the Trump administration says it ignored a Saturday court order to turn around 2 plane loads of alleged Venezuelan gang members because the flights were over international waters, and therefore the ruling didn't apply, to senior officials tell Axios. A second administration official said Trump was not defying the judge whose ruling came too late for the planes to change course. Quote, very important that people understand we are not actively defying court orders. Yeah? Well, Stephen Miller and Tom Homan and J.D. Vance are saying otherwise. Now, another argument that they're making is that the district court judge who temporarily blocked that flight, James Boasberg, doesn't have the authority to stop the president from carrying out these deportations because Trump has statutory authority to unilaterally carry out all deportations, which is something that we brought up earlier, which is an argument that no other president has ever made. But since they think that the judge doesn't have the authority to tell Trump who he can or can't deport, well, that's why they felt like they didn't have to comply with the order. And on Monday in court, as Talking Points memo explains, Trump's DOJ argued that the government could disobey court orders so long as it was conducting activities outside of the United States if the order was issued verbally or if it deemed information that it's required to provide subject to national security concerns. So if it feels like they're kind of just making shit up as they go along, that's because they're just making shit up as they go along. And the judge even acknowledged in court, oh, you're clearly just doing whatever you want regardless of my order. Like, for a judge to acknowledge that they are not complying with his order, that tells us that this is purposeful. This is intentional. They are openly defying a judge. But even though they're outright saying that they're not going to comply with this order, some Republicans are defending the Trump administration and saying that this is an outright defiance because Judge Boasberg's emergency ruling was just issued too late. And if the planes were already in the sky, what could they do? You can't turn them around. But here's the thing. They knew a judge would take issue with this before it was blocked, which is why they released this new executive order invoking the Alien Enemies Act at a very conspicuous time and rushed those deportations through as fast as possible before a judge could intervene. But they're also simultaneously saying that it doesn't really matter what judges say because the president has the power to deport anyone because he has statutory authority to make deportations as a matter of foreign policy, and he's commander-in-chief, so he can do what the fuck he wants. But they're basically trying to have it both ways. On one hand, they're trying to say that they couldn't possibly have complied with this order since the planes were already up in the sky, which is a lie. But even if they could, they didn't have to comply since Trump has the statutory authority to deport anyone he wants as commander-in-chief. It's like they're trying to nuance troll us into a constitutional crisis. And the Venezuelan deportations in particular came after Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1789, which is the law used during World War II to detain Japanese Americans in internment camps. And the way that this executive order is worded makes it so that way the Trump administration can basically characterize any Venezuelan migrant as a member of a gang, or perhaps any immigrant in general as a gang, and deport them on those grounds, thus denying them due process because, well, they said they're a gang, so it must be true, we must deport them immediately. And the Trump administration is claiming that all of the people that they deported were gang members, but they didn't actually provide any evidence for that claim, and there was zero transparency throughout the entire process. According to the New York Times, multiple relatives of the men who have been deported claimed that they were not affiliated with gangs, contrary to the Trump administration's claims, and the mother of one of those immigrants said that she got a call from her son telling her that he was going to be deported and didn't really know where they were going to take him, and his name disappeared from the Immigration and Customs website, so she wasn't able to track where her son was. And furthermore, she claims that they gave her no evidence whatsoever, like the other relatives, that her son was part of a gang. Now, come to find out, her son was transported to an El Salvadorian prison, and we know this because the president of El Salvador, who is aligned with Donald Trump and is a fascist himself, tweeted confirmation that he received all of the men and shared this video of their faces and heads being shaved and then being marched into a massive cell. This is kind of like fascist porn. And when I say porn, I mean that conservatives were blowing their fucking loads to this video with no concern whatsoever, of course, about whether or not these men had their due process rights violated, or the fact that these families say that the men aren't actually in gangs. Sure, some of them maybe were, but if you have multiple relatives saying this is not somebody who's a gang member, I think that's cause for concern. No, not to the Trump people, because they don't care. All immigrants are evil and gang members as far as they're concerned, so fuck them all. It doesn't matter if their due process rights are being violated. It doesn't matter if the process is shady. It doesn't matter where we take them to, just get them out. It's so gross. We're seeing fascism and watching democracy die with thunderous applause, effectively, and I just don't know how to process that. It's very blackpilling. Now, this was done, again, in defiance of a court. I have to keep emphasizing that because I don't think that we should let that fact slide. But this isn't the only instance of the Trump administration defying a court. In fact, it's not the only time he's defied a court this week, because as the New York Times reports, Rasha Alawa, a doctor at Brown University who specializes in kidney transplants, was also deported in defiance of a court order. Now, per CNN, she later reportedly acknowledged that when she was in Lebanon, she attended the funeral of the Hezbollah leader recently assassinated by Israel, and they found pictures of him on her phone. Now, why they were looking through her phone in the first place is a question that still hasn't been answered, and that's kind of weird. But believe it or not, the First Amendment applies to everyone in the United States, including H-1B visa holders like her. So you may not like that she seemingly supports Nasrallah, but she has a right to support Nasrallah. Moreover, the fact that her deportation was carried out in defiance of a court order is a problem. Because look, maybe you don't care about this person in particular, but if the process isn't followed, if courts' decisions are no longer acknowledged, the Constitution is no longer in effect, and the rule of law is null and void. But I don't think that people really understand that. Like when we talk about Mahmoud Khalil, people who support Israel will say, well, he was, a pro-Palestine protester, so fuck him. And they'll lie and say that he supported Hamas, while not realizing that this is something that could affect them as well, right? Because in the event we had a Democratic administration that was pro-Palestine, inconceivable, but in the event that were to happen, or if a Democrat wanted to create hate speech laws, they could be fucked over by it, which is why we all should fight for freedom of speech and the First Amendment, because it affects all of us. It's something that we all, I thought, cared about, but apparently not. But, it seems like the end goal here is to just make sure that the Constitution is null and void. Trump wants the law to be whatever he says the law is. And even though this is new for America, it's not new around the world. I mean, there are plenty of countries where presidents rule by decree without judicial oversight and where the legislatures basically act as rubber stamps for the executive. We call these kinds of systems dictatorships, though. And it was my understanding that Americans didn't want to live in a dictatorship. But here we are. Now, listen, I'm not going to say that we are definitively a dictatorship. That's currently not the case. I don't believe that. The fact that you and I can still criticize this administration is evidence that we haven't entered dictator territory just yet. But sadly, we are headed in that direction very clearly because Trump wants to be a dictator and is taking meaningful steps to make that a reality and claiming that criticism of him is illegal. I mean, permanent residents like Mahmoud Khalil are already being punished for political speech. And the question is, are citizens next? We'll presumably find out soon, and what happens in the near future will determine what kind of a regime America is going to be going forward. Will we be a flawed, increasingly illiberal democracy like we are now, or will we fall to full-blown authoritarianism like so many other countries have? That question will be answered for us shortly.
Okay, let's go to a commercial break, and we'll be right back.
I'm Alex Curtis. I'm a lobsterman in Maine, and this is me.
I'm Roxy Sugar, and this is me.
I'm Eric Hopkins. I'm an artist, and this is me.
This is me.
Me.
This is me.
This is me.
At the end of the journey, the main thing is you, original.
Trade war, I can start one just today. I can go declare it now, have my guys disavow that markets are in disarray. Should I tariff everybody? I can start with eggs and steel. Then go avocado, sell it with bravado, and see who's forced to make a deal. Cause I give no F's, dear, not even a single one. I say things and then retract them, because I'm just having so much fun. When my story's told here, no one will think me bad. They'll all just remember how fun I was when mad. Should I force a big recession, then be angry on TV? Take a loan from Putin thugs and guys who sell the drugs, blame the guy who came before me. Should I start a Great Depression, like in 1929? At least they called it great, overshadows my mistakes, and then save the day just in time. Cause I give no F's, dear, not even a single one. I say things and then retract them, because I'm just having so much fun. When my story's told here, no one will think me bad. They'll all just remember how fun I was when mad.
I really hate that sad loser, Mr. Newberger.
Who, me?
Trump's got it wrong. So does Elon Musk. We're not quitting.
Americans from every walk of life, Democrats, Republicans, independents, they all know it's wrong to cut veterans' health care, wrong to cut FAA air traffic controllers, wrong to fire FBI agents for doing their jobs, wrong to cut deals with corrupt politicians, wrong to pardon terrorists, wrong to get in bed with Putin, wrong for an American president to call himself a king. They're organizing, getting loud, and getting heard, going to town hall meetings and putting MAGA on the hot seat. Trump thought we'd give up without a fight, that we'd be too scared to push back. Well, fuck that, and fuck him. We're in this fight till the end, till Trump's gone and America is free again. And nothing's going to change that.
Feel my heart is so confused, my baby. I think between the couple, girl, but I'm a few person of your love.
Did you know that baking soda and ice cold water is the crucial secret to reach firmness? Just go to the kitchen and do this before going to bed.
I never stopped to think about that.
Exactly. It's simple if you think about it. There's no miracle. The only thing that makes a man firm is increasing blood flow to that area.
That's what the famous blue pills do, right?
Yes, but they do it by dilating the veins. That's why they don't solve the problem permanently. There's only one way to permanently fix this problem without relying on pills, prescriptions, pumps, or exercises, and that's by clearing out the veins that are clogged with plaques. That's why the Indian doctor is getting so popular in the media. He discovered an Indian bull trick that can clear out more than 93% of the plaques. This brings 20 times more blood flow to the area for men. That's why this trick is so effective. A top research team at Johns Hopkins University investigated and confirmed that this trick works for any man, regardless of age. There are already over 62,000 men in America alone who have permanently reversed the problem.
When I saw that I could get firm again without taking any pills, I couldn't believe it. It had been years since I was able to perform.
For over 6 years, I couldn't stay firm. My marriage was terrible, and my wife left me, and we got divorced. That's when I found the Indian bull trick recipe, and I still can't believe I'm firmer than when I was 18. Now I'm dating a woman 20 years younger than me, and she's very satisfied with my performance.
That's incredible.
I told you it's something innovative, and it's been proven to work for any man. I'll leave the link to the free class here for anyone who wants to see it. So, click the button below and watch the free video with the full recipe.
But why isn't anyone talking about this in the media?
This trick was recently discovered, and since it was found, blue pill sales have dropped by over 60% in India. The industry is very worried that this natural trick will become popular in America. That's why they're doing everything they can to keep it from being publicized. This free class has already been taken down twice, and it's close to being taken down for the 3rd time. And this time, it looks like it will be permanent. So this could be the last chance for those who need to see this information. Click the button below and watch the free class with the complete step-by-step guide.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it.
It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
Every day is a good day to ride. Bike life is the best life. If you know, you know. Now, are you riding? Or are you hiding?
2001: A Space Odyssey on the fucking radio? Jesus. Oh, okay. Welcome back, everybody. Got the second video here. It's from Midas Touch, Mike Polpot. And he's going to be discussing essentially the same thing, but he's going to have like a different perspective there on that. So let's go to that video there, and we'll discuss all this on the other side of it.
Using an apt analogy from sports, a litigation hearing broke out during a fight last night. That's the only way I can describe what happened with the Trump administration escalating its assault and open defiance of federal judge orders, the federal courts themselves, during a hearing in front of the chief judge of the District Court for D.C., Jeb Boasberg. The hearing was supposed to be about whether the Trump administration had violated a temporary restraining order issued by the judge to stop the continued deportation of people subject to a last-minute secret proclamation of Donald Trump, which he made public only on Saturday, trying to invoke war powers and a phony war to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport people as young as 14 years old and purported gang members and send them to a notorious barbaric supermax prison in El Salvador. It appeared to everyone who watched, including the judge, that it violated the judge's orders, which he issued late on Saturday evening in court with the lawyers present, that planes should not take off as of the time of his order, that everyone in the Trump administration, in the relevant departments and agencies need to know about his order. And if planes were in the air, they needed to turn immediately around. That did not happen. And when you hear what the Trump administration's excuse was, you'll understand why the judge was so upset and started to push back hard against the Trump administration. I'm Michael Popak. You're on the Midas Touch Network and Legal AF. This is a fast-moving story, all breaking since Saturday. This may well be the constitutional crisis that we were expecting to have. Donald Trump drawing a line in the sand and deciding that this is the thing he's going to use to test the outer boundaries of his power and beyond. Jeb Boasberg called the hearing together after a series of filings, one by the American Civil Liberties Union, who filed the case in anticipation of Donald Trump trying to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport people, to turbocharge his deportation plan. They filed a lawsuit. The judge entered a temporary restraining order that initially applied to 6 Venezuelans. Then the judge got word through the ACLU that Donald Trump had actually signed, apparently, on Friday, the Alien Enemies Act proclamation declaring himself to be the commander-in-chief during a phony war. The judge then expanded his temporary restraining order during a hearing to include all people affected by the proclamation. So he did what we call, he certified temporarily at least a class of people. He then entered an injunction on top of that class, and he expected, as any federal judge would, that the Trump administration would abide by it. Apparently, there was at least one, if not 2 planes that took off after the judge entered the oral order, and then later followed it up with what we call a minute order, which is an entry on the docket. But let's be clear, I've been doing this for over 35 years. A judge looks you in the eye during a full 2-hour hearing, and at the end of the hearing issues an injunction. That injunction is an injunction, oral, verbal, until it's memorialized. When it's memorialized, when you see the actual written order, which is only a minute order because we're moving quick here, so the judge just had time to do a slight entry. I'll put the entry up in the video here. From there, you await the judge's written order. But if there's no written order, then you were there. The transcript, which gets filed on the docket, which is the actual, what the court reporter takes down as everything that happened during the hearing, that informs you as the lawyers and the parties as to what the injunction is. The Trump administration tried 3 ways tried 3 ways to ignore and defy this federal judge. First, they ran to the Court of Appeals, the D.C. Court of Appeals, and for the D.C. Circuit, and made a request by letter that the judge be removed from the case because the Trump administration doesn't like the fact that he's asking hard questions about when planes took off and where they landed and why they violated the judge's order. So Ensign for the Department of Justice filed a 2-page letter with the clerk in which they asked ultimately for the removal, claiming that Trump had some sort of core Article 2 authority not described that would remove the jurisdiction of the federal judge. In other words, they don't recognize the jurisdiction of the federal judge, even though the federal judge, the job of a judge is to interpret the Constitution and other laws and determine whether the executive branch has violated any of those aspects. That's what a federal judge does. So they ask on page 2 of the letter, this court should also immediately reassign this case to another district court judge, given the highly unusual and improper procedures used that have been employed by the judge. The district court did not make a move on that. And just so you know, Jeb Boasberg is eminently qualified here as a judge. He was appointed to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, the FISA court, by Chief Justice Roberts, served there valiantly for 5 years. He was even part of the court about enemy combatants and aliens being deported. So he has experience there. He has a top security clearance. He handles in DC and as the chief judge classified documents and information all of the time. And so they attack him for his procedure, right? Which is, and as a person, that fails. They then send a letter, a response to the judge, telling the judge, okay, we can't get rid of you. You have no jurisdiction because we have all the Article 2 power in this unitary president model, and you don't have any power. You're just a single federal judge. This is their mantra now, single federal judge in a single city, and you can't conduct a war power or executive power. You know, that's not what the judge is doing. What the judge is doing their job in the co-equal branches and checks and balance system of our constitutional republic. That's what's going on. And so they filed this motion to vacate the hearing. You can't even hear any of this, Judge. It's above your pay grade, effectively. And the judge said, denied. We'll see you in court, which led us to this hearing that I'm now reporting out. During the hearing, the judge put all of the lawyers for the Department of Justice, their feet to the fire, but particularly the lawyer they chose to argue this. His name is Abhishek Kambli. Abhishek Kambli used to work as a lawyer for the Air Force. I'm sure he knows a thing or two about flights and planes, and then worked his way up apparently and is now Deputy Attorney General in the Department of Justice, having worked in Indianapolis. Let me just he took on some fire from the judge. The judge says, apparently my oral rulings don't seem to carry much weight with you. And because they had this whole argument, which is ridiculous, that until it was memorialized in the minute order, which is a 2-line order, they didn't have to comply with the judge's order orally given, and they could ignore it. And then they pointed to the fact, well, Judge, your written order doesn't talk about turning around planes, to which the judge said in the transcript, apparently, the transcript of what happened, and you were there, sir, demonstrates what my ruling was and the basis for it and the parameters and contours of it. So if you had any question, you pull the transcript and you read it. I can't tell you how many times in my career we've ordered the transcript from a hearing so that we fully understood the judge's rulings. You can't rely on a placeholder minute order placed for 2 lines on the docket as your injunction if you're the party being enjoined, right? That is beyond a ridiculous and nonsensical position to be taken by the Trump administration, but that's what they do. So the judge says, no, you get the transcript, you read the transcript. I ordered you to inform all relevant departments, turn those planes around, and apparently you didn't. Now tell me why you didn't and give me the timeline. They refused, right? The same guy, Deputy Attorney General Kambli, refused to respond to these questions. I'm not at liberty, Your Honor. I'm not at liberty to anything more than we wrote in our 2-page paper, and effectively telling the judge, you're not worthy of this information. It's classified. And the judge says, I have top secret security clearance. We can't tell you. That's not the showing that you need to make in my courtroom under federal law about why you can't tell me. First of all, it's not about whether they can tell him. It's about whether it ultimately goes on the public docket for you and me to see. The judge can look at it with a level of classification as a federal judge, and all the time. They do it what's called in camera, which means they look at documents secretly off the docket. They turn off the microphone so the press can't report on it. They look at the documents. They have discussions in chambers, which is where the judge hangs out when he's not on the court, on the bench. And they have that discussion. And then he decides how much, if any, of that ends up on the public docket after a round of briefing. That's all he's trying to do. But they refuse to answer even his questions. This is the open defiance of the federal judiciary and the rule of law that we've now seen, right? This is about the third example of at least of federal judges calling out the Trump administration for refusing to testify in court, refusing to provide an affidavit, deporting somebody when they were ordered not to be deported. That just happened up in Boston, Massachusetts, right? Not stopping Elon Musk from going through servers and financial information, medical information, and the rest, not rehiring people that have been ordered. This is where we are with this administration. And the Supreme Court is ultimately going to have to deal with it. Now, what has the judge done? There's two parallel tracks on this case that we're going to be following closely here on Midas Touch and on Legal AF. First, on what is effectively a contempt hearing about whether the Trump administration willfully violated the court's oral order, and what was discussed during the hearing as reflected in the transcript, yes or no. The judge is going to have to get the timeline on that. So he's ordered the Trump administration noon today, Tuesday, to supply a declaration under oath, sworn statement under oath, providing two things. One, what are the logistics of the planes, and demonstrate for me with my oral order. Don't rely on my written 2-line order. Explain to me how you didn't violate the oral order. Secondly, tell me how the planes logistically took off. And if you're not going to tell me that, because you're going to claim some sort of executive privilege, then you need to make a showing as required by the law in your briefing. I expect that by noon as well. Separately from that, because there was a couple of clocks running here at the same time, the Trump administration just filed their motion to vacate the original temporary restraining order, because that was due on Monday as well. So that just came in. I'll do a separate hot take about that. But their fundamental argument there is the court doesn't have jurisdiction to hear this matter. The executive branch lords supreme over the Article 3 branch, and that the judge was wrong. And this one you've heard before. The judge was wrong to enter a quote-unquote universal injunction because he doesn't have the power to do that. That's that single federal judge in a single district argument you keep hearing from the influencers hired by the Trump administration, the MAGA senators and congresspeople, Carolyn Levitt, the press secretary, and the rest. Right on cue, they push a button and this echo chamber starts. Now, one little side note before I get to my hot take on that a little bit later today. This isn't a universal injunction. This is a class action, which was certified for now by a judge, joining together everyone adversely affected by the phony proclamation on the Alien Enemies Act, and then an injunction related to that class. That's different than a universal injunction. I'll explain more a little bit later. Now, look. Let me just end the hot take this way. We're going to get a filing at noon. They're going to continue to try to bang away at the circuit court, the federal circuit court for appeal about getting the judge removed, about trying to stay this injunction while they move to dissolve it. That's the term in the trial court level, while they try eventually the Hail Mary past the United States Supreme Court, which I think is all going to happen. The United States Supreme Court involvement as early as the end of this week or beginning of next week. That's as early as that could happen. Keep that on your calendar, on your radar, and we'll follow it here. The Alien Enemies Act is not a war power. It is not something that a commander-in-chief necessarily using his powers implements. And there's no war been declared, which is the fundamental basis of using the Alien Enemies Act. Sure, if there's an imminent threat of an invasion or an incursion, until Congress can get its act together, the courts have seen, and the Constitution says that the president has certain responsibilities and duties. But where's the war? this slow creeping 10-year thing where drug gangs have been invading America, that's the imminent threat. I mean, even the Supreme Court should see through that. So we're not at war. We're not at war with Venezuela. We're not at war with the Maduro regime in Venezuela. And sending people without due process to horrible supermax prisons in El Salvador to satisfy the desires of the quote-unquote philosopher king, President Bukele in El Salvador, is beyond corrupt and beyond unconstitutional. And we have to ask ourselves, what is the country that we are living in, that we woke up in? Is this who it is to be an American? I'm sure many of the people who were deported, these 250 people that were put on the flights in violation of the court order, I'm sure many of them may ultimately prove to be just as terrible and just as violent and just as criminal as the Trump administration makes out. And if that's the case, then they should have no problem going through the proper constitutional method to try them, deport them, and send them where they like. I just don't think it's El Salvador. And I certainly don't think it's doing it with some jokey social media, all apparently approved by lawyers, where they're doing closing time videos, with them getting off the plane and Border Patrol taking them home. Look it up. You have that BS going on. You got Bukele going boohoo in his social media posts. Apparently, this is all approved by lawyers in the Trump administration who coordinated their messaging. And the brains of this operation, and I use that term lightly, is apparently Stephen Miller, as I predicted, who is the deputy White House chief of staff, used to be in the first Trump administration. He's the non-lawyer that came up with all the legal strategies about separating families and putting kids in cages. Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem, the puppy killer, who's our head of Homeland Security. Apparently they came up with this idea to use the Alien Enemies Act and these planes violate the court order, and then try to fix it on appeal. If you don't like the federal trial judge order, then you appeal, you don't defy. You appeal, you don't defy. That's the society in the world, the constitutional republic that we live in. And just to wrap it this way, every major constitutional issue that's ever been litigated up to the United States Supreme Court came out of a one single judge, single district ruling on a constitutional matter about the president's powers or about the Constitution that ultimately went up to a 3-judge panel of a federal district court, federal appellate court, and then up to the United States Supreme Court. That is our method. That is our logistics, period. And Donald Trump trying to break all these norms and argue that federal judges don't have the power they have, that only he possesses all of the unitary powers. He tries to divide and conquer, needs to get shot down immediately by the United States Supreme Court. It certainly will at the intermediary appellate court level, and we'll continue to follow it right here. Until then, I'm Michael Pope.
Well, there's a lot of concern. Constitutional crisis, yeah. I'd say yes, we've crossed that line. We're into that. And here's the thing. I'm going to ask everybody here watching this. Say you had to go to court. Say you, you committed some kind of a crime. I'm not going to say you're a criminal, but let's just make believe, okay? Imagine you committed a crime and you had to appear in court. Okay, you got bailed, all right? And the judge says you have to come back at this date, for court appearance or whatever. And so that day comes and you don't show. And the day goes by, a couple days go by. What do you think would happen to you if you didn't show for court? Well, certainly not nothing, right? You'd get a visit from the cops or they'd be looking for you, right? So my point is here that since Trump defied a federal judge, okay, and a restraining order, if you or I had done that, what do you think would happen? Okay? So to say that a judge doesn't really have any power here to do that is not entirely true. He has the police, okay? And here's the thing. If this, if a judge ever decided to send the cops after Trump in the White House, what do you think how that would look on, to the American public? That you see the civilian law going to the White House, and then Trump utilizes the military, okay? Don't you think that would spark something? Don't you think that would be the catalyst to take things, to the last line? I mean, you know what I'm saying? I'm just kind of imagining here what a circumstance here would happen. Because that seems to me like what's going to happen is that eventually Trump and the law are going to butt heads over who gets to say what goes. And if a judge is constantly being ignored, there's going to be a judge who's not going to allow that to go on, okay? Because every judge knows what their powers are, what they can do. And, at some point, there's going to be the government versus the civilians, okay? And what do you... you think about that for a minute. I mean, this is where it's all going to. Eventually, if the civilians don't push back, they're going to be stepped on further and further and further along while Trump does what he's doing. And now I'm telling you, they're both right. Both these videos are right. Trump is heading us down a very dark path here. And I told you all that before the year is over, we're going to be at a very bad place. We're going to be at a very bad place, and it could, be deadly for a lot of people. All right. And, we might be just sitting here on the eve of, a massive revolution in this country that's about to take place because we have a government that's out of control now. It doesn't care about the rule of law. It doesn't care about due process. It doesn't care about a person's status. They're just, like they said, he's just saying, okay, get rid of these people for whatever, just get rid of them for no reason. Maybe because he doesn't like their skin color. Whatever the problem is, he's got people that are willing to lie for him to justify what he's doing. That tells you that, he's got sycophants surrounding him who are going to do his bidding. Now, at some point, people that have a moral core, I should say, people who have a moral core are going to say, this has gone far enough. So I'm kind of asking, where's that line? Where's the line that's the last line before they say that's it? Okay. I mean, if we're not close to it now, I don't know when we'll get to it, but I'm just saying, why wait? is my response. Why wait? Why wait till it gets to the point where more people are hurt because of what Trump is doing? More families are split apart, ruined, deported, whatever. Why wait until then? If you got any fucking soul in you at all, you would already be pissed off and ready to do something, okay? Seriously. And we all know how far Trump is willing to take this. He's not playing around. He never was, okay? He's going to do what he wants, and he's got all the people that he needs to make sure that it gets done, whether it's legal or not. He's not going to listen to any judge's orders, okay? And he's got lawyers that are going to try to stonewall and make up all kinds of ridiculous excuses. Now, look, there is no such thing as an excuse when it comes to the law. They tell you ignorance of the law is not a defense. So, Trump going around telling his lawyers, tell him this, tell him that, okay? That judge doesn't have to believe one fucking word that's coming out of the mouths of the lawyers. And at the end, all he's going to say, well, all the excuses aside, there is no justification for what happened, and ignorance is not, a justifiable defense against not understanding the law. So that's it. So if you're going to have a restraining order put on and it was defied by the president, he's going to have to be held accountable to that, which means, you know, at some point, you know, a judge is going to have to send the police or have him arrested, detained, or whatever. And that's when, you know, the shit's going to fly. Because when they show up at the White House, you know, and they won't just send 1 or 2 cops, okay? Because they'll be very well aware of, you know, of what might be facing them when they get there. You got the Secret Service, you got maybe some military there. It could be a standoff. And that right there is not going to look good for the rest of the public, because then we're going to see that it's come to that point now. You're going to have to pick a side. Who are you standing with? The government or the civilians? You know, who are you going to stand with? And that's what I'm predicting where we're headed. And I don't think that Trump will know how to handle that. Okay, despite everything that he's done, okay, basically what he's been doing is acting like a 2-year-old, okay, ignoring anyone that tells him what he can or can't do, okay? If it comes down to him trying to stand his ground, okay, and doing things, he won't be able to do that without these fucking assholes around him, okay? They're basically going to carry him through all that shit, but he's not a leader, okay? If he wants to be a dictator, he won't be a dictator for very long. He's going to be the worst one that's ever come down the pike, you know, because he's not a very good leader. So he's not going to be a very good dictator either. So his time in office will come to a quick end, and so will his regime because of the way he does things. What I'm concerned about is that somebody else in that administration would just basically pick up where Trump leaves off and continues what he's done, okay? That's what I'm worried about. And that's why I'm saying, why wait till he crosses the last line? It's time for people now to make their fucking choice. Okay? And I'm talking about people that have, the arm of the law, that they're, basically protecting the Constitution and all that. They're going to have to make a choice. When you're called for action and stuff, you're going to have to know where you stand before you do anything, okay? And, I think anybody out there who thinks that, I'm just making shit up and I'm just, blowing hot air, okay, well, let's just say that I am, okay? Does it mean that what's been going on is right in your eyes? I mean, think about it. Just review all the shit that he's done already. Okay, and if you're okay with all of that, okay, fine. But there's going to come a point where it's not going to be okay because, if Trump sees that nobody's going to move on this or move on that, he's going to keep pushing that envelope a little bit further until eventually that envelope starts touching your doorstep. Okay, by then, you might have had a better chance to stand up against him before, but now it's come to your property, come to your door, come to your life. And now you're not going to be able to make the stand that you could have done before. And it might have, I'm just saying, don't wait. Never wait, okay? It's like, procrastinating. How many times we tell people never to procrastinate, okay? You push things, you kick the can all the time down the road, and eventually you can't do it anymore because the can has gotten so fucking big that you need King Kong to fucking kick the motherfucker, okay? So, this is where we're at now, I think. There's no... We can't expect an arm of our government to correct itself now. Trump's got control of a lot of it. We can't really expect the judiciary to do much to oppose the government. Congress, by all accounts, seems to be throwing their hands up in the air. There's no call. I mean, yeah, there's people saying, oh, Chuck Schumer should resign. Yeah, there's all kinds of people saying that, but is he going to? I don't think so. I don't think so. And, I get the impression that, he's just going to ride it out till the bitching dies down because Trump's going to get his face in the headlines again, and then everyone will forget about Chuck Schumer, and he'll still be around. But you won't be able to get a whole lot from the Democrats or from Congress, for that matter, to stand up against Trump, okay? I'm sorry. Like I'm still saying that the midterms are really the only place where we the people, will actually be able to do anything, assuming, of course, the Republicans don't fuck with the vote. Okay? I mean, they've already done that already. I mean, that's, that was something that they were doing before the last presidential election, going around tampering with the districts and all that. So, yeah, we still have that problem, and we still have to kind of hope that, by then, I mean, he's, that seems like a long way off, okay? Because look how much he's done in just seven weeks, okay, Trump. That midterms thing doesn't come till next year. That's a long time to wait. I mean, Christ, imagine that. What's going to happen. That's why I say the end of this year is going to be very, very fucking dark. I mean, Jesus. God only knows what's going to happen. Now, let me read this article here, which is kind of off the topic here a little bit, but it's this is something that's just happened here today. But this is from the Minnesota Reformer, titled, GOP State Senator Justin Eichhorn arrested on suspicion of soliciting sex with a 16-year-old girl. This is written by Michelle Griffith and Christopher Ingram. State Senator Justin Eichhorn, Republican, Grand Rapids, was arrested in Bloomington on suspicion of soliciting a minor for sex. Bloomington police led Eichhorn, 40 years old, to believe he was talking to a 16-year-old girl, and then met the senator and arrested him Monday near the 8300 block of Normandale Avenue, according to a Bloomington Police Department press release. Senate Republicans have called for Eichhorn's resignation. Quote, "We are shocked by these reports, and this alleged conduct demands an immediate resignation. Justin has a difficult road ahead, and he needs to focus on his family," unquote, Senate Republicans said in a statement Tuesday. Police say they saw Eichhorn arriving in the area by pickup truck and arrested him without incident outside his vehicle. Eichhorn was booked into the Bloomington Police Department jail and will be transported to the Hennepin County Adult Detention Center. The release said felony charges of soliciting a minor to practice prostitution are pending, Bloomington police said. Quote, "As a 40-year-old man, if you come looking to have sex with someone's child, you can expect that we are going to lock you up," unquote, Bloomington Police Chief Booker Hodges said in the release. Quote, "I have always advocated stiffer penalties for these types of offenses. We need our state legislator to take this case and this type of conduct more seriously," unquote. Senate Majority Leader Aaron Murphy, in a statement, said the allegation against Eichhorn is deeply disturbing. Quote, "The felony allegation against Senator Eichhorn is deeply disturbing and raises serious questions that will need to be answered by the court as well as his caucus and constituents," unquote. Eichhorn's arrest complicates efforts by Senate Republicans to expel DFL Senator Nicole Mitchell from the upper chamber following her arrest last year after she was alleged to have burglarized her stepmother's home. Jesus Christ. Although some Democrats, including Governor Tim Walz and some of Mitchell's colleagues, have called on Mitchell to resign, the ethics case against her has been blocked by Democrats who say expulsion should only come after she's received due process in the courts. Her trial is scheduled for after the session. Republicans have said she's brought dishonor to the institution and should be immediately expelled even before a criminal trial. During debate about a motion to expel Mitchell, Senator Jordan Rasmussen, Republican Fergus Falls, said doing so would restore integrity to the Senate. Quote, "We don't need the results of a criminal trial to know Senator Mitchell's conduct fails to meet the standards of ethical behavior that we expect from senators," unquote, Rasmussen said in January. That argument presumably now applies to Eichhorn as well. In February, Eichhorn reposted an article on Facebook about attempts to expel Mitchell, saying that the, quote, "growing scandal keeps pulling focus from the legislature's important work. We need to end the disruption and let voters choose a new senator," unquote. In 2021, he objected to a bill requiring Minnesota schools to teach about sexual orientation and gender identities, saying, quote, "Before you know it, they'll be reading kids 50 Shades of Grey. This discussion is better had at a more mature age," unquote. Cohen was first elected to the Minnesota Senate in 2016 and works at his family's outdoor store in Grand Rapids. He's also co-authored a bill to classify, quote, "Trump derangement syndrome," unquote, as a mental illness. Okay, well, remember I told you about that yesterday, about that Trump derangement thing. You don't suppose that the next day this happens, that maybe this was a hit job or retaliation, from somebody in MAGA or Trump himself. The hypocrisy of this guy, and then what is it with Republicans? I mean, why is it that sexuality and all these things seem to be such a big fucking problem for them that they just can't deal with it? And yeah, so the other one was caught burglarizing. Okay, yeah, all right, that's sort of like in today's, and the way the world is today, that's sort of a normal crime. But when you're propositioning a fucking minor for sex, I mean, come on. which to you is a more egregious crime here, a robbery or prostituting a fucking little kid? Jesus Christ. But I'm just saying, I mean, why is it with them? I mean, maybe if he was nicer and didn't say what he said about mental illness here, what Trump derangement syndrome, maybe he could have got Trump to pardon him or something, because hell, birds of a feather, right? So I don't know. I saw this. I had to bring it up because I saw that there was there's so many angles and so many things on that to pull apart and laugh about and bitch about that. I don't know how many people are even aware that this is going on. I'm pretty sure that they're trying not to talk much about it outside the state of Minnesota, but it's I don't know. It's whenever these things happen, it always seems to detract people from the real things going on. But it's certainly having somebody like that, if all this is true, okay, then you can't have people like that in government, okay? I mean, that's corruption right there, and that's how it starts. When you put corrupt people in positions of power, they do corrupted things, okay? It's like, why expect, a broken lawnmower to work when you pull on the fucking cord? I mean, if it's broke, it's never going to work, okay? If there's people who have no moral core, as this fellow certainly does, then why would you want him in there as a representative? Of course, I know people didn't know this stuff about him, okay? At least not everybody did. Maybe a few people around him probably knew he was weird or something. But nobody really knew about this guy's past. And I'm sure the Republicans, made sure that all of his closets remain closed and locked, so that way there would be no peeking to find out what he's doing. But he couldn't help himself. He's 40 years old, so not a young man. So he's obviously been doing this for a long time. If he's 40 and he's doing that, then he's done something before. He's probably got a whole bunch of kids that he's done this to. So God only knows what kind of tidal wave that's going to bring down. But you see, this is the reason why, I kind of talk a lot about we need to be smarter about the people we elect in office, because if we put people in there who don't care about law and order, who don't care about why we have laws, and don't care about respecting what judges say, okay, what do you think's going to happen? Right now, we're seeing what's going to happen. We're living it right now. This is what's happening when you got people like that in power. Okay? Instead of getting rid of the folks that obviously don't belong there, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and whoever, when we don't get rid of these people, when we see the signs right off the bat, if we don't get rid of them, we're setting ourselves up for bigger problems down the road. And that's the reason why we are where we are right now as a country. We have a guy in the White House right now who really should be, in prison for the things that he's done. Okay, he's a criminal. Remember that, people. Of everything that we hear about Trump, always remember, he's a felon. He's a criminal. He's broken the law. He's gotten away with it. He's done some heinous shit with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, I think we all know that. Okay, this guy's not on your side. He's only on his own side because he spent all his life covering his ass for everything that he's done wrong. That's a habit that he can't break. So when it comes to what's better for me to do to help you or to help myself, he's always going to pick himself every chance he gets. Okay, you're going to be last on the list. Don't think for 1 minute that he's going to give two shits about you losing your fucking job because of something he did. Okay, he's not going to care. Michael, that fucking reality show, you're fired. That's the easiest fucking thing for him to say to anybody. You're fired. You know, some people might have a hard time to fire people because they know what that means for people who lose their job. But for him, no, it's just another, like playing checkers, crown me, Basically, that's what it is to him. It don't mean nothing. It's just numbers, okay? So don't fucking think that, he's suddenly going to wake up and realize, oh, shit, I've been doing all these things wrong. I got to undo it all. He's never going to do that. He's not going to undo it. He's going head first into this thing, Project 2025, and he's just going to do what he's going to do. And he's happy that he's not in prison because he's got what he wanted. Get out of jail free card. It's the only motherfucker that could do that. So anyway, that's it for today. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week. So subscribe, comment, share, and keep your ears open for health issues. And, treat each other nice out there. Be respectful. Don't step on anybody's toes. And no road rage either. There seems to be a lot of that going on right now these days. So control yourself when you're driving. I'll talk to you guys later, so take care, everybody.